Welcome back. We are looking ahead to the House vote on impeachment, as well as looking back at the IG report now. Joining me is Republican Congressman John Ratcliffe of Texas. He's a member of the Judiciary and Intelligence Committees and a former federal prosecutor. And Congressman, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Maria.
So we are expecting this impeachment vote to be on Wednesday. What are you expecting in the week ahead? And tell me about the reaction you've been seeing from that IG report.
Yeah, as you said, the vote will be on Wednesday, despite what a Democratic scholar called the fastest, thinnest, weakest impeachment in U.S. history. That's the direction that we're going. The real question is, how big will the jailbreak be by the Democrats? We've already seen one Democrat apparently switching parties over it, another saying he's going to vote against it. And so really the question is, how many more before Wednesday's vote? And the reason for that, Maria, is because the Democrats have made the mistake of staking the credibility of all this on Adam Schiff. The person that they put in charge of this investigation turns out is the one that helped start it by meeting with a person who walked out of Adam Schiff's office and became the whistleblower. And at the very same time that that's happening, as you mentioned, now there's an Inspector General report that comes out that says during the last impeachment hoax, the Trump-Russia one, Adam Schiff repeatedly made false statements to the American people about the FBI's actions. And so I think, that's what's happening, and that's why the Democrats have been rushing to keep this from unraveling and keep their folks in line, and they're having a really hard time to do that. I wouldn't want to bank my political future on Adam Schiff's credibility, but they've made that mistake.
Yeah, so, going back to the IG report, Adam Schiff was certainly out and about a lot throughout the last 3 years saying that there is collusion in plain sight. And now we get the IG report and we actually see the misconduct and what they call errors, fraud, whatever you want to call it. What is your reaction to what you learned from Michael Horowitz?
Well, it wasn't just that Adam Schiff was out and about. He put out a report that said there was no FISA abuse by the FBI. That was false. He said that the FBI didn't fail to turn over exculpatory information. That was false. He said that the Steele dossier was not a central part of the FISA applications against Carter Page. That was false. The Inspector General's report, the findings in there detail all of that. It's an indictment of the things that Adam Schiff was saying. It was an indictment of Jim Comey's leadership at the FBI. The biggest takeaway for people out there, Maria, is that what the Inspector General's findings very clearly delineates is, even if you concede, and I don't, but even if you concede that there was a predicate to start this, there was no predicate to continue a counterintelligence investigation against the President of the United States. They had to do it by making those false representations to the FISA court.
Yeah, and we're going to speak to Devin Nunes shortly. Of course, you referred to the Nunes memo back in 2018, February of 18, where he wrote out all of the misconduct that took place by that cabal of people. And of course, then Schiff came out with that correcting the record memo, which we know now was wrong, just flat out wrong. You mentioned some of the wrongdoing. One of them, as we know from the Michael Horowitz report, is an altering of a document by an FBI lawyer. Tell me about that, and where are you expecting accountability, Congressman?
Well, as the Inspector General's findings outline, what are referred to as errors and omissions are false statements, misrepresentations, destruction or alteration of documentary evidence. I mean, what you have are FBI lawyers literally changing evidence to make false representations to the court to continue this counterintelligence investigation against the president. So, it details. Now, everyone's entitled to a presumption of innocence. Democrats never want to give one to Donald Trump. But the Inspector General's findings really outline what is criminal activity. I mean, we're talking about FBI lawyers who are depriving folks like Carter Page of their civil rights under color of law, tampering with evidence, taking documents and making them say the opposite of what they really represent, and certifying that to the court. So, really terrible, and again, an indictment of Jim Comey's leadership at the FBI, and of the things that the Democrats said to, again, most important point, to continue a counterintelligence investigation against the sitting president of the United States when there was no probable cause to continue it. That they started by making 7 errors and omissions that were misrepresentations, alterations of evidence, and then added 10 more to continue it along the way. You know, I don't think the American people can really appreciate the damage that was done to the FBI during Jim Comey's tenure there.
So are you saying that there was criminal activity against Carter Page and against a sitting president?
Certainly, I would love to be Carter Page's lawyer. His civil rights, as alleged in the findings by Inspector General Horowitz, very clearly delineate that. But there were actions taken by individuals at the FBI to continue a counterintelligence investigation against a sitting president, against his campaign, and then against his presidency. And, you know, so these are things, the findings made by Inspector General Horowitz that I would now expect John Durham to look at from a criminal standpoint. I'm not saying that I'm not making allegations that anyone should be convicted. These are allegations. Everyone's entitled to a presumption of innocence. But do I think that there's activity detailed in this that should be investigated and prosecuted? Absolutely.
So do you think people could go to jail? Could people go to jail over this? Absolutely.
I mean, what would an aggressive prosecutor do with this if the folks involved were George Papadopoulos or Michael Flynn? The findings of fact made by the Inspector General here, you know, certainly detail potential criminal activity which would send people away for a long period of time.
All right. We're also going to talk with George Papadopoulos coming up so he can tell us exactly some of the conversations he had, which now we know are exculpatory evidence, which were not given to the FISA court. We're also looking at when the investigation actually started, because as you know, the FBI tells us that the investigation, the counterintelligence investigation began in July of 16, but there were informants running into campaign people as early as March of 16. So we'll speak with Michael Mukasey coming up. Congressman, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks so much.
You bet. Thanks, Maria.